What is up, everybody? Welcome to Worker to Worker, episode 9. We titled this one, If It Quacks Like a Duck. And I'm pretty sure you'll understand why when we get to the end of it. For those of you who haven't had a chance to meet me yet, my name's Eric from UFCW Local 8 in California, beautiful Inferno, Northern California. And I'm joined with a friend who has recently touched base with me, and we have trauma bonded over our experiences in our local. This is Amy. Amy, why don't you introduce yourself? Let everybody know where you're from and what local you're with and maybe what brought us together.
Hey, I'm Amy Reynolds. I am from Noblesville, Indiana. I'm out of Local 700, UFCW Local 700 here in Indy. Well, what brought Eric and I together is the exploitation of UFCW members and the things that we want to change with our union, and the things that we see that are just very corrupt and just seem to be abuses of power.
We met. We had a chance to be on some Essential Workers for Democracy calls when they were organizing around No Vote campaign in your guys' area,
and labor notes.
And at the labor, oh yeah, dude, and at labor notes, and
in a workshop.
Out here trying to gain education, right? Like it's really funny because it's like as you try to become what many people would say is like a strong, active union member. In our locals, your local 700, my local 8, you don't find any pathways to that within your local. So you've got to go outside, and you end up finding organizations like Labor Notes and Essential Workers for Democracy that are helping rank and file members like us get access to that information and show us that a different kind of unionism exists out there. It's funny because every time I meet somebody from another local, and you guys in Local 700, to be honest, I've been very lucky to get to meet people in these like really militant and active locals to show me that there's even like a new way possible. But to talk to you guys out in Indiana and find out that, like, dude, these guys all read out of the same villain handbook. It's like cookie cutter, the same. Like we're stuck in a pretty tough situation, and maybe you can speak to a little bit of the experience that you've had in 700 as you've kind of come up against that. What was it that made you want to get more involved in your union, and what obstacles did you find when you tried to make that decision?
Oh, well, I was born into unionism. I mean, I came into unionism when I came to life. So I'm a third generation union worker. My dad was an IBEW electrician. His dad was an IBEW electrician. My mom is retired from UFCW. My sister is a UFCW member. My brother, firefighter, paramedic, and my stepdad, retired UAW. I'm from Kokomo, Indiana, which is where Sean Fain, the president of UAW International, is from. And you drive around Kokomo and you see proud union home signs out in the yards of a lot of homes, and it's a place where unionism kind of runs the city. And I came to my unionism as a small child through my father. So and it just it lit something in me that I can't explain. And when I went to work for Kroger as a teenager, I was immediately taken by the union. I was immediately, because unions were always talked about in my home growing up, and what they were and what they meant. But I also was very aware of what union corruption was when I was a child, and it was explained to me explicitly. My father, he was very much against abuses of power in unions. He was a strong union member. One of my last memories of him alive, when I was a little kid, was him running into the house and giving my sister and I two stuffed seal pups. And I had no idea where he had gotten them. I just know that he was the happiest man alive to see us. And a few years later, I was probably 7 or 8. I asked my mom where he had gotten them, and she said he had gotten them in Washington D.C. And I said, "Well, what was he doing there?" And she said he had been there to testify in front of the National Labor Relations Board. And I said, "Well, what does that mean?" She said she started to explain what the NLRB was to me. And we had always talked about my dad's unionism. And she said he had caught company bosses voting in union elections. And I asked her, "Well, what's wrong with that?" And so, being a 7-year-old, 8-year-old, she explained to me exactly what was wrong with that very explicitly and in no uncertain terms. Your company is never to be involved in your union. And that my dad hated abuses of power by both sides, and he worked to root it out, and he won his labor board charges. And that sparked something in me as a grieving kid, that I just saw a light. And I knew that there was something with unions that I needed to do further down the road. So once I went to work for Kroger, and I joined the union, I just, it developed over time. So I became a union steward very early on, and I've not stopped my stewardessism or whatever throughout my career, even when it was stripped from me.
Yeah, that's hey, we we have that in common. My steward, shop steward status was stripped from me for a quote unquote lack of loyalty. My rep told me that he expected more loyalty out of his shop stewards. I told him, before we get too deep, and maybe we are already too deep, but just a
I'm
disclaimer.
sorry, I took it a little deep.
No. You're okay. I want to make sure that everybody knows. First of all, like full disclosure, because we're talking about like union corruption and like internal union corruption, it's something that like it's what radicalized me into this movement, was recognizing it in Local 8. And because of that, I'm very passionate about that, and I might slip up and swear. So I want to say, like, just right out the gate, if I drop an F-bomb or two, I've really tried to clean it up. If you would like to hear what swearing Eric sounds like, go to the recorded meeting archives in the Discord server. Those are not available online, but you can hear me. When I first started this, it was very like direct in your face, like Jacques Laval, slur XYZ. But I've tried to kind of mature beyond that, and in an attempt to grab a wider audience, temper down my language. But this stuff pisses me off. It's something that is now personally impacting me. Situations like that, where you have a rep in a leadership and authoritarian, not authoritarian, but in a position of authority, basically within your union, taking something away like a shop steward status due to a lack of loyalty to them personally. That was a very radicalizing moment to me. I told him I would never kiss his fucking ring. Is what I said to him verbatim. That my loyalty is with my coworkers. And if that's what you expect out of your shop stewards, then you picked the wrong shop steward to start with. And so I know what that feels like. And I'm guessing you did the same thing. What I did was, like, I actually don't care about the title. I don't need you to call me a shop steward to be a shop steward. I can be a steward for my fellow brothers and sisters in my union. Whether or not you want to call me that is irrelevant to me, quite honestly. I may not have the legal protection.
Stewards, Eric.
And you know what? I think the UFCW has been sorely lacking in stewards of the union on a massive scale. That there are people who have been tasked with, and I grew up not in a union family. I'm a first generation union member, as far as I know. Unionism has never been spoken of as anything important. It's been very capitalist focused, individualist focused. You grind out, you do you succeed for yourself. Fuck everybody else. That's what I was raised on, and I lived my life that way. I kissed ass all the way to the top, and I got nothing for it. Was left empty-handed. So to come back down into unionism and to try to embrace that collective idea of it's we, not me, and then bring that into my local and have that shunned. Basically, I was told to stop boat rocking and troublemaking, which I didn't even know those terms. I now have a International Boat Rockers and Troublemakers Union hoodie from Labor Notes that, like, it's so weird when you find out, like, they call you that, and then it's like, oh, that's an actual derogatory term within the union to call people like me.
But that's what they call people who question their wrongdoing. It there anytime someone speaks up, anytime someone has the courage to stand up and speak up and speak on truth and intelligence, they call them a troublemaker. And they turn people against them and tell them they're just causing trouble just because they want to deflect from what they're doing. And they have a lot of loyalty amongst people that, like we had talked about a little bit ago, that they're wanting to get a job, or they're wanting
Mm-hmm.
to go out and work for the union on a campaign and things like that. And those are people that will bootlick their way into that. And so they know that they can get those people on their side. They can tell when you're easily swayed and manipulated, and you're not questioning everything that they're doing.
Yeah.
And if they weren't doing anything wrong, I wouldn't have any reason to question it, and they wouldn't get defensive, or they wouldn't try to deflect or gaslight.
And some of the, so for I'm sure we have like parallel paths here, but yours went a little like to the awesome extreme intensity that I haven't gone to yet, but I'm on my way, baby. Uh, but in moving down this path and being like, hey, I want to be in the room for negotiations. Seems like a reasonable ask.
Well,
Members should be in the room for negotiations. Go
hold
ahead.
on, Eric, because I did do that. I did get on a bargaining committee, and it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. Because and if you don't mind, I'm going to speak on this.
Yeah, so do
What ended up,
do me a favor before you go too deep, because in our local there are no members allowed on the bargaining committee, period. We asked about becoming or getting in on that, or changes to that or anything, and we're shot down. So can you kind of explain the bargaining structure in local 700 before you let people know what your experience is, just so they can understand like how you even got in the room in the first place?
so the bargaining committee, when I was on it, and now it was made up of the president of the local, the secretary treasurer was there, and then everybody that was an e-board member that was also a rank and file or a steward, like somebody that worked for Kroger who is also on the e-board, was there. And then a few random stewards, myself being one of those random stewards, because I was not on the e-board. I was not chosen. um, I believe I was probably picked to be a member of the bargaining committee, just to kind of shut me up and hopefully to get me on their side. And that really didn't work out in their favor.
Whoops.
I ended up getting kicked off a couple years later. So, which I wear as a total badge of honor. I love it, and I like to tell people that. I brag about it. It makes me feel very good, because ultimately it was a sham when I was on it. And when I was on it, also the current president of the International was in the room as well with us. He was in charge of like healthcare strategy for the International, and he was helping the locals with their contracts, because Obamacare was at the Supreme Court, I believe it's 2012. And essentially, like, the bargaining committee of rank and file, we just sat in a room. I mean, we would sit there, we introduced ourselves to the company's bargaining committee, we went around, we talked about a few little like non-mandatory things, like we didn't even really bargain. And then when it came to the mandatory bargaining and some of the other stuff, Joe and Mike, the president and secretary treasurer, would go in a separate room with Kroger, and they would have sidebar conversations. and no member was privy to that. And then they would come out and they would say, hey guys, we're going to get something written up, and we'll talk to you later about what we decided, and we'll meet with you later. And they would take pictures, and that was it. And every time we met, and I think it was maybe a total of 5, 6 times, that was all that happened. Except for, like, there were a few times that went around the table, and we were told ahead of time by Joe and Mike, and I believe Milton also said they were not supposed to mention our health care at all during any conversations. And Kroger ended up mentioning healthcare, and I called it out, and they all had like this little shit face grin, and they're like, Amy, it's okay. It's not that big of a deal. It's not that big of a deal. I'm like, but you said they're not supposed to call that out to us. Well, it's okay. They're watching you. They're taking notes on you. Every time you say something, they're taking notes on how you react and what the look is on your face. Just sit there. It's fine. It's fine. So, I mean, to me, that wasn't fine.
No.
You're telling me one thing, and then you're telling me another, gaslighting me a little bit later, and then I'm not privy to anything that's really going on. And so then at the end of bargaining, we were told to sell this to the membership. It was when they removed spousal coverage from their insurance, and we were told, we got to get this passed, sell it in, sell it in. And that's what we went out to do. And I just felt like a total fraud sitting there, and people were pissed because they were losing their spousal coverage. Then we got called back like a year and a half later because Kroger was having problems hiring people,
Yeah.
and they needed to raise the starting rate of pay. And we got called back because it had been quietly negotiated, secretly negotiated between Joe and the company that they were going to raise the rate of pay for the new hires and then throw us like 30 cents.
Mm.
And so they just wanted me to go out with a rep and the rest of the bargaining committee to have people vote on it. And people were pissed because they weren't getting as much as what the new hires were getting.
Yeah.
But I was like, I had nothing to do with this. They just told me to be at the office. They said it was really good news. And I'm like, this isn't really good news. This is just, you're throwing just like pennies at me.
That's
I mean,
crazy.
yeah, I mean, so essentially, like, even though you don't have a bargaining committee, we don't either, because they don't do any negotiating. They're not skilled negotiators. Even like the president that we have now, Tracy, he's not some skilled negotiator. And you know, to assume that he is in collective bargaining is nonsense, because collective bargaining isn't about one guy. It's
Right.
about a whole group of guys, or a whole group of people. It has nothing to do with a single man.
Mm-hmm.
There's a line, and I think it's the Solidarity song. What strength does one feeble man have? You know,
Yeah.
I think that's like the gist of it. I mean, he going up against a massive corporation, and you're just one guy in a room, and then we hear later on in this contract people are saying, well, Kroger was really mad at Tracy and the bargaining committee because they didn't sell this in. That's like mom and dad spanking you because you didn't clean your room. Like, he's
Yeah,
being
seriously.
admonished by his mommy and daddy. Give me a break.
If
So
I was a
when
local union president, the last thing I would ever want the companies to say that I represented members for was that they were happy with me.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't want to make them happy like that. Kiss my ass. You know, it goes to show that there are a lot of people that don't really realize how this should be.
No,
It's
that's
and
true. And that we deal with that in
it's
our local, where it's like I didn't know whether it was a problem with my rep, whether it was a problem with my local, whether it was a problem with the international, whether other, I had no idea. And it took me a long time to even find other locals that did it different, because like you said, you try to bring up an idea, you try to say something, and you get shunned, you get talked down to. These people are presented to you like I had a phone call with a vice president last week. I was trying to get a hold of my local president, and they refused to let me speak to him. So I started talking to a vice president, and he kept reminding me about how expert my bargaining team was. I said, hey, are you guys aware of this? Are you aware of this? Did you know that we've got managers being flown out to Colorado already? They're out there working. They're scheduled for 2 weeks. That tells me that they're going to try to sweat them out there. With our managers pulled out of NorCal, this is a great time for us to go on a ULP strike. You have an expert bargaining team. Your bargaining team is he laughs like, of course we know all that. You have an expert bargaining team. Well, I've been in the room with these people, and I'm assuming some of the people in the room are part of the bargaining committee that during our general membership meetings. I don't know. We'll find out. But I want to tell like everybody that's listening right now, and you can confirm this because you've interacted with your local leadership quite a bit. These are like regular ass human beings, like just as normal as me and you, like nothing special about any of these people. Any experience they have is just experience that they've denied to you. There's nothing, no knowledge that they carry that you can't hold, nothing. I haven't met one person where I was like, wow, you're special.
Are you talking about like the bargaining team?
I'm talking about people in my local leadership. The people like when you say, that Tracy and Joe go into a back room and they hammer out these deals that there's something like that's not an expert negotiator. That's just they're just regular people. No. There's no reason that they're more qualified than you to speak on your behalf about what you feel you deserve in a conversation against your company in which you're the threat of not hearing is withholding your labor.
They want to act like they do know better than you what you need. And they're not my parents. They don't know what I need. They know what they need, which is to get the deal done and to make their lives comfortable. And, I don't know if you listen to any of those podcasts I sent you about the UAWD members, but it really strikes me as something that is very similar to our situations. And we haven't been out on strike here, but they do gaslight people an awful lot about strikes and say, well, are you really ready for a strike? Do you really know what that encompasses? Most people don't, but they're not willing to even put forth an effort to train people how to react to this sort of thing, number one. But number two, there would be no need for strike talk right off the bat if we were all allowed in the room. If open bargaining was a thing and sidebars were prohibited and there was full transparency, we would not need to talk about strike right off the bat. But it's used to gaslight the members into voting yes on contracts, just like the UAW would use strikes to wear the membership down. Mm-hmm. And say, well, you guys can't really afford to stay on strike. You probably should just vote yes on this contract, these concessionary contracts. And it's not doing the membership any good, because that's not showing real solidarity. And that's one of the biggest issues with business unionism. It's a sleazy way of running a union, because it has no place in unions. In
business models, all that power, it just goes straight up. It goes straight up to the top. It's when I called my local office to speak to my local president. I said, I know Jacques' a very busy man. I would like to talk to him. If he's not available, can I schedule an appointment? And she said, oh, it doesn't work like that. What questions do you have?
How does it work?
She made me like tell her my questions. And so I said, here's my 4 questions. And she's like, oh, I can answer 2 of those. And 2 of those are questions for your rep. And I said, ma'am, do you think I'd be calling the Roseville office if I could get answers from my rep? And then she's like, oh, you need to talk to his boss then if he's not doing his job. And I told her, I said, ma'am, I'm calling to talk to my local president. I'm not calling to report a problem that you guys are all well aware of. That's not the purpose of this call. I'd like to speak to my local president. And she said, well, there's an order to things. And I said, oh, you mean like a chain of command? And she got all excited. I can hear her excitement through the phone. She said, exactly. And then I said, do you think there's a problem with our chain if the members aren't at the top of it? And she's got real quiet and she said, that's not what I said. We have a protocol. I can't just connect you to Jacques Laval. I said, I understand you're just a staff member. I'm not trying to bust your balls, but you get where I'm coming from. And she said, yeah, I get where you're coming from. Do you want to talk to John Micheletti? And I was like, yeah, connect me to John. And that's the conversation I had with the VP. And again, like, we want to talk about union corruption, and we're going to have a part 2 because this corruption goes deep. I actually pulled up my LM2. There's stuff on my LM2 that I want to talk to you about, but we're not going to bring it up in this call because it's going to start like a 20 or 30 minute conversation.
Yeah.
But I also asked about it on that phone call with the vice president. So when it comes to corruption and money, we'll save all the work that you did on your side and what that's triggering on my side, and some of the interesting things I've already found in the LM2. But to kind of put a cap on what we've got going on right now, member access to their union is essential to a well-functioning union. And if we don't have that, you've been calling it business unionism. It's the business union model. It's a corporation dressed up as UFCW.
It's a third party.
Sitting right on top of you, just like Kroger does, just like Albertsons does, and doing the exact same thing. They're extracting your value away from you, and it's not getting returned to you equal to what you're providing for both the union and the corporation. Do you agree with that sentiment?
Well, oh yeah. And what you were talking about previous about how you have reps that say, well, the company will see this and you shouldn't be calling us out in front of the company. That just divides us. No, what they do divides us, and the company already knows what they do.
Yeah.
The company is well aware of what goes on.
They're hand in hand on that.
Yeah, they're, that old saying, they're in bed together. And don't think that I don't know that. I had my own secretary treasurer, the one that just retired a few months ago. He told me, oh, when I was out to lunch with so-and-so, and I'm like, you were out to lunch with the director of labor relations, with the senior director of labor relations? Yeah, we went out to lunch and we were talking and your name was brought up. Oh, Amy's still around. And I'm like, so you're lunching with these guys? That's part of the problem is when they get too friendly, and that's where things are exchanged. And that's what happened with the UAW and Chrysler Fiat, in a restaurant out in Detroit, Michigan. And all of these deals are done under the table, and no member is privy to any of it.
No, man, I will say to UFCW staffers that are listening to this right now, if you don't want your members to accuse you of shit like that, then do everything in the light. Do it out in the open. Be transparent with your actions and your activities. It seems a certain kind of way when you and the company are the only two things winning in these interactions that occur, and the members, the rank and file worker, just keeps losing more and more and more. And it doesn't matter what we lose. Every time we lose more, it comes at us as some historic win. Oh, historic wages, never before seen gains in health and welfare. Like, we've all heard it. Oh, historic increases to the pension fund. Dude, the companies haven't even started funding the pension agreement, the Lisa account that you created in our last contract. The companies haven't put a dime into it. They were supposed to start paying into that thing in August of 2024. The only power you have, you see, and that's in a contract, okay? So if you think the power lies in your CBA, your contract, it doesn't. It lies in our ability to stop working. When we stop working, this whole thing ends. It's the strike threat. It's just the strike threat. So if your own union is neutering your strike threat, they're neutering your membership, the rank and file. And we all are in that boat. We're all in that situation where we get bad deals shoved down our throats, and we have to stand up against our own union and say, get your ass back to the table, like you guys did in 700. Very inspiring, by the way. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
That's hard. That's really hard to do. Maybe not for you because you're a badass, but for people who aren't putting in the work to like stay on top of this stuff, when you hear from again, people in a position of authority, you should be able to trust your rep when they say this is a good deal. You should be able to trust them.
I don't I don't trust the reps. I don't trust anybody that works with the UFCW because they've proven not to be trustworthy.
That's so
In
sad, and I
what I
feel the
know,
same
what
way.
I've yeah, I mean there's so little transparency. It's just non-existent. And I feel like a lot of people beg for scraps where I don't beg for anything. I'm going to tell you, okay? Take it. Do it. Stand up for yourself. Don't beg. People are like, well, I'm going to ask Tracy this. I'm going to ask Tracy that. Don't ask Tracy for something. Tell him to do it. Tell him what you want. And if he doesn't do it, go over his head. Go to the 10th person over his head. Do whatever you have to do to get to do what you want him to do. Find a way. Where there's a will, there's a way. I mean, I get so tired of hearing people say, well, so-and-so won't call me back. So I email them, they won't email me back. Well, figure out a way to get it done. Why are you just thinking, well, they're just not going to call me back. I'm going to give up. Figure something out. Get their attention.
That's really sad because that works. Like my rep is very good at sweating people out, and 3-4 days go by. It's like, if he doesn't care, I don't care. The person's not as mad about it as they were on day one, like that type of thing. That's all by design. That's all like, yeah, I'll wait you out. You won't call me 3 times. If I don't answer till the 3rd call, you probably 60% of your grievances never even come if you wait till the 3rd call before you do something about it. And we've had to deal with that. Actually, our rep was, and we'll wrap it up with this, I'll give you a chance to close us out, but our rep was actually very, very friendly with our company labor relations. We found out when we had some issues come up that were taking 6 months to get resolved. And I was screaming from the rooftops like, yo, why don't we have time limits in our contract about when we have these issues? Why does it just get to take 6 months to get resolved? We need like limits on grievances in our contract. And my rep's like, yeah, that's probably a good idea. That's probably a good idea. One day I'm reading through my contract and I find the paragraph on grievances and it's full of time limits. 30 days, then 30 days, then 20 days, then arbitration. And I'm calling him and I'm like, bro, we got a violation. They're not following. Well, guess what? Dude never filed a grievance because he's friends with labor relations and they work everything out on the side. So now we don't bring a problem to our rep unless the very first thing we say is, I would like to file a grievance, please. And then say your thing. Because if he doesn't, we're going to pin him for misrepresentation. And if he doesn't tell us that's not a grievance because of XYZ, then we're going to pin him for misrepresentation. And what we've gotten out of that is a grievance filed every time. And that's what needs to happen. That's the point of that whole process, is so that you can protect yourself. And if the company can't get their shit together fast enough, then it goes away. Oh my, that was really frustrating. But that whole like,
we need to talk off the record because I'd like to tell you a few things.
Cool. We'll definitely talk more, and we'll wrap this up so people can kind of digest everything we jumped into. But long story short, we got some problems in the UFCW. The UFCW is not interested in fixing those problems, but rank and file members are. They're getting active. They're participating. You just got to hear from Amy. She's out there killing it. And on the next episode, you'll hear some more about how killing it she is. But she's out there fighting, and she's got it in her DNA. So, there's a history there that is like, you care very deeply about unionism, and you can tell in the passion that you bring to the way that you talk about it. So I just want to say thank you, sister, for being an inspiration to those of us that are trying to be better union members ourselves. It's been really awesome meeting you, and I'm really excited to talk to you again. Do you have anything else for the people before we call her a day?
No, we'll see you at part 2. It was great talking to you, Eric. I can't wait for part 2.
Me neither. It gets crazy. All right, we'll call it a wrap on this episode.
Turn it into a whole series.
It could become its own podcast. You know what? If we're gonna move on a road towards real reform in our local, then it might be kind of interesting to be touching base and kind of sharing those stories.
yeah, we're at opposite ends of the country, and we came to our unionism in opposite ways and trauma bonded here. So maybe we can do a series.
Awesome.
Maybe
Awesome.
we can do a whole series on this. So,
All
but it
right.
was great talking to you. I can't wait for part two, Eric.
Good talking to you. All right. We'll call it a wrap. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next time. Bye
Okay.
bye.